During a routine patrol, a female police officer suddenly stumbles on something odd, a huge crate full of cash. Just as she's about to ask the man where on earth all that money came from, an off-road vehicle comes roaring toward them from the distance. A few big thugs jump out without a word and immediately open fire in their direction. Terrified, the female officer dives back into her car, but their target doesn't actually seem to be her. In the chaos, the man takes the chance to scramble into her car. Only then does the officer realize this deadly mess is somehow connected to that crate of money. So what filthy deal is hidden inside this cash, and what earth-shattering secret is this man carrying on his shoulders? To find out, we have to rewind to a few months earlier. In the heart of the city at night, a man named Drake sneaks into a pawn shop, but he doesn't rush to make a deal. First, he carefully scans the shop before finally pulling out a finely crafted watch. The shop owner grabs it eagerly and examines it, only to discover it's just a fake, utterly worthless. The only lucky part is that the hands of the watch still move. The owner looks up, about to quote a price, but finds that Drake has vanished without a trace. Once the gun smoke clears, several more masked robbers storm into the shop. One of them vaults the counter and fishes a key from the owner's body, then neatly unlocks a steel door leading down to an underground club. The rest of the gang rushes in like fish to water, flooding into the basement. Two of them slide down on ropes, and on the way, they casually gun down a security guard. The bald one lands safely, then immediately draws his gun, hugging the wall as he moves. Sure enough, there's a survivor hiding there. After quietly solving this last security guard, the rest of the robbers arrive at the lowest level. They weave through dark corridors, checking every room, clearly searching for something very important. Just then, a man in a suit who looks like a manager is dragged out roughly by the gang. Panicking, he begs for mercy, saying everything was already sent to headquarters yesterday afternoon, so there was no need for this big show. But their leader, Drake, doesn't believe a word of it. He answers by slapping the man twice across the face. Feeling the gun pressed right between his eyebrows, the man in the suit finally stops pretending to be tough. On the verge of tears, he insists he has nothing, then points toward the changing room at the end of the corridor. When they pull one of the lockers open, a hidden door appears behind it, perfectly concealed. Under the threat of the guns, the man in the suit uses his fingerprint to open it. Behind the door is, indeed, a different world. A room stuffed with millions of US dollars. Seeing all that money waiting to be moved, Drake finally breaks into a satisfied grin. The gang then packs all the cash into crates. The man in the suit tries to warn them about the disaster that's coming, but Drake sends him to heaven with a single bullet before they leave. Before heading out, Drake forces all the witnesses into the vault, tosses in a grenade, and strolls off like it's just another day. Soon after, the gang drives their truck full of money to the airport, planning to use it to start a brand new chapter in life. At this point, the final boss Rose appears, lurking in the shadows. Seeing the meticulously planned heist go so smoothly, Rose can't help applauding them. But the most important thing now is absolute secrecy. They can't let anyone trace their movements, or the party's over before it starts. They'll wait a while longer before splitting the cash and celebrating. After assigning the next steps, Roz orders his men to load the money onto a plane and install a tracking device on every crate in the cargo hold. But even the best plans need a bit of luck. While the money is transported smoothly, the plane runs into a snowstorm en route. In those brutally harsh conditions, the plane is finally struck by lightning and bursts into flames. Months pass, and a hunter named Harlan appears in an Alaskan forest. Harlan walks over the frozen surface of a lake. He survives by fishing and hunting every day. This time, he's here to pull up his nets. While he's crouched over an ice hole checking the nets, he suddenly spots something in the distance. Curious, he grabs his ice pick and walks over. Inside the thick ice shell, he finds half of a human hand trapped inside. Startled, Harlan raises his pick and smashes the ice hard. As soon as he breaks a hole, a fully frozen corpse shoots up from beneath the water, rises up from under the water. Terrified, Harlan keeps stumbling backward, and as he gasps for breath, still shaken out of his soul, he suddenly spots a black object nearby. Forgetting the corpse completely, he grabs his ice pick and walks over again. When he fishes it out, he discovers it's a beautifully crafted combination lock case. He lifts his ice pick and smashes it down to break the lock. The moment the case pops open, dozens of bundles of cash make his eyes practically sparkle. It's the kind of fortune a regular person couldn't earn in an entire lifetime. Harlan peers deeper into the frozen lake and even spots the cash plane sunk at the bottom. That night, Harlan brings the money back to his cave. In his heart, he wrestles with the choice: report it to the police or quietly keep it all for himself. He has no idea this crate of money is going to drag him straight into a life-threatening disaster. Early the next morning, local police officer Anne is out on routine patrol as usual. It's her first official day on the job, and she's barely out the door before running into a couple of tourists looking for trouble. They want to drive their car across the ice, but because the weather's been warmer lately, the ice is no longer 4 feet thick. One careless move, and they'll be driving into the afterlife. So Anne can only warn them that the lake has been closed off. Of course, they ignore her completely, and manage to get their truck stuck in an ice hole. Anne circles the pickup once, then opens her trunk, pulls out a tow rope, and hooks it to the back of the truck. Just as she's about to get in her cruiser and pull them out, she sees Harlan approaching, dragging his fishing nets and carrying his ice pick. Seeing his fishing gear, she immediately concludes he must be a poacher. So she calls him over and gets ready to inspect his luggage. Right on cue, the money inside the lockbox is discovered just like that. Anne immediately draws her gun, gives him a loud warning, then pats him down from head to toe. Once she confirms Harlan doesn't have any dangerous items on him, Anne radios the situation into her chief. She hasn't even finished her report when the roar of an engine screams toward them from afar. A black off-road vehicle charges straight at them and finally screeches to a halt right in front of the two. 3 big guys climb out. The robbers led by Drake. They've been following the tracker on that case for months, and they finally tracked it here. Drake doesn't bother with small talk. He points his gun straight at Anne's head and demands she hand over their property. The problem is, Anne has no idea what these people are even looking for. All she can do is raise her hands and obey his orders. Drake then tells his men to search the truck. Eventually, they find the case inside the cab. Knowing the money on the plane was far more than what's in this little box, Drake starts interrogating Anne about the rest of the cash. But Anne truly has no clue where the money came from. Drake, furious, is about to pull the trigger and shoot her. At that critical moment, Harlan suddenly charges out and tackles him to the ground. The tourist nearby also pulls out a gun to help. Caught off guard, Drake can't dodge in time and takes a bullet in the arm. Seizing the opening, Anne jumps into her patrol car and tries to retreat. But as soon as she hits the gas, she remembers her cruiser is still tied to the pickup stuck in the ice. No matter how hard she floors it, the car can't move at all. While the robbers and Anne are locked in a standoff, Harlan quickly slides behind the pickup and unhooks the tow rope. Anne finally slams the gas and speeds off. And Harlan dives into the back of the patrol car, managing to escape danger, for the moment at least. But robber Serena suddenly leaps into the truck bed. In the cramped space, she and Harlan wrestle furiously. In the struggle, Serena grabs the lockbox and tries to jump off. But Harlan kicks it out of the truck. The huge centrifugal force sends the case flying far away. Serena sprints desperately after it, but she's still one step too late. She can only watch as the case sinks to the bottom of the lake again. Anne manages to get Harlan away safely, but the poor tourist isn't so lucky. He's shot dead on the spot. In the chaos, the robbers watch the bundles of cash drift across the lake's surface, and their rage boils over. Drake doesn't even stop to check his own wound. He orders his men to get in the car and give chase. No matter what, they must find the rest of the money. But just as they're about to set off, they notice one of the tires has already been shot out. Drake has no choice but to call their bald teammate to drive over and back them up. Meanwhile, Anne is still speeding away like crazy. On the road, she can't help asking Harlan what on earth is going on. He stammers out that yesterday, while fishing, he happened to find a crate full of money, and even a whole airplane beneath it. As for what else was inside the plane, he has absolutely no idea. After hearing this, Anne immediately radios the situation to the police chief. She asks him to send units to the frozen lake to assist them, otherwise, those robbers will definitely circle back for them. After the call, Anne decides they should head somewhere nearby to rest. But when she glances down, she realizes the patrol car is completely out of fuel. With no other choice, the two abandon the car and continue on foot. Anne has lived here for 30 years. She knows that in this temperature, the ice beneath them is extremely fragile and could crack at any moment. For safety, she removes the rope she previously used to restrain Harlan, then takes a seatbelt and fastens it around both of them. This way, if one of them falls through the ice, the other can pull them up in time. But what they don't know is that their silhouettes are already clearly visible to the robbers behind them. Drake immediately orders his men to give chase. At this moment, Scarface speaks up. Anne and Harlan are locals. They know the terrain and dangers far better. If they recklessly pursue them, everyone could end up in danger again. But Drake doesn't care. He only wants to find the rest of the money as fast as possible, so he orders them to keep going. The moment his men try to accelerate, however, the thin ice can't handle the vehicle's weight, and the truck immediately sinks into the water. The driver panics as he feels the truck slowly sinking. He tries to open the door to escape, but the ice jams it shut. Luckily, Scarface has experience with this. He instructs the driver to climb over to the passenger seat, then tosses in his belt for the driver to hold onto. The others on the ice all grab onto the remaining end and start pulling. Working together, they finally manage to drag the driver back to safety just before the truck fully disappears underwater. Right then, the bald teammate arrives with another vehicle. Drake realizes that on thin ice like this, cars can't possibly catch up to Anne and Harlan. So he orders the bald guy to switch to a snowmobile to continue the pursuit. Meanwhile, Anne and Harlan finally reach the edge of the lake. But the ice here is even thinner than before. They can even hear cracking sounds coming from below. Not long after, the bald pursuer catches up, closing the distance quickly. With no other choice, the two sprint desperately toward the shore. They step on floating ice slabs that could crack at any second, using their buoyancy to crawl and roll. Finally, they barely manage to escape onto solid ground. Fortunately, this place is close to Harlan's cabin. He rushes inside and digs through his toolboxes, pulling out all his hunting bows, arrows, and animal traps. In this situation, these old tricks are their only hope of slowing down the pursuers. As expected, the bald pursuer spots them from afar. Luckily for Anne and Harlan, he came out without bringing his brain. He doesn't notice they're setting traps. He accelerates straight at them. The snowmobile slams right into the trap, sending him flying dozens of meters away. Ignoring his own injuries, he immediately crawls toward his fallen gun. But Harlan, quick-eyed and quicker-handed, fires an arrow that lands perfectly in the bald man's thigh. Though the pain is enough to make anyone see stars, the guy still forces himself up to reach for his weapon. But before he can even raise it, Harlan smashes him on the head with his bow. The two start wrestling violently on the ice, their movements shaking the thin surface beneath them. Since the bald guy is stronger, Harlan is quickly overpowered. He manages to yank the arrow out of the man's thigh and stab him repeatedly in other spots. Just as Harlan tries to stand and escape, the ice suddenly gives a sharp cracking sound. Unable to dodge in time, he plunges straight into the freezing water. Even worse, the The bald guy has no intention of letting him live. He points the gun downward and keeps firing into the water. Cornered, Harlan has no choice but to swim deeper temporarily, hiding out of sight once the bald man loses track of him. He plans to surface near the broken ice opening to counterattack. After securing the situation, the bald man forces Anne to reveal the crashed plane's location. But he doesn't realize that Anne has quietly crept up behind him, placing a sharp animal trap directly onto his head. The moment the steel jaws snap shut, the bald man lets out a gut-wrenching scream. Bright red blood splatters across the pristine snow. He thrashes violently on the ice, but soon goes still from massive blood loss. Anne immediately rushes to the ice hole and pulls the shivering Harlan out of the water. Knowing they shouldn't stay here long, the two quickly grab their gear and retreat deeper into the forest. But just as they leave, Drake and the others arrive on snowmobiles. Serena jumps off first and sees a fresh splash of bright red blood nearby. Panicking, she rushes forward and finds the bald man dead. Seeing his body lying on the ice, Serena collapses emotionally. Turns out she and the bald man were husband and wife. Never in her worst nightmares did she imagine he'd die so horribly. Wiping her tears, she vows to personally take revenge, no matter what. The group follows the footprints in the snow and charges into the mountains in pursuit. Meanwhile, Anne and Harlan are exhausted, their pace slowing drastically in the thick snow. It doesn't take long for the robbers to catch up. Serena spots her targets and instantly opens fire, bullets slicing past the two like angry bees. At the very last moment, Drake shouts for her to stop. As the gang's second in command, he knows if Harlan dies, they might never locate the sunken airplane or the money inside. Hearing this, Serena forces herself to swallow her rage and holds her fire. The group continues chasing and quickly realizes the robbers are tracking them by their footprints in the snow. If they keep going like this, they'll be caught sooner or later. So she leads Harlan into a shallow creek nearby. The two walk through the freezing water for nearly 10 minutes before coming ashore again. Then they use tree branches to wipe away their remaining footprints. As expected, when Drake and the others reach the creek, they lose the trail completely. Not long after, the group enters a clearing. Scarface immediately senses something is off. But Serena, blinded by hatred, ignores him and rushes deeper into the woods. In her carelessness, she falls straight into a hunting pit. This area happens to be one of Harlan's regular hunting grounds, and the trap was set by him long ago. He just never expected it'd end up catching a human. Serena screams in pain. The others quickly stop the chase and work together to pull her out. They then find an abandoned wooden cabin deeper in the forest. Planning to treat Serena's wounds there, while Scarface and another robber stand guard outside, a vehicle suddenly appears from afar. When they look closely, they recognize the man stepping out. It's the mob boss, Roz. He came after getting reports from his men and is ready to make everyone pay. But since they're now on unfamiliar territory, charging blindly would be suicide. So first, Roz needs a strategy. But before anything else, he must punish the traitor among them. Turns out that back during the heist, Aris and another man secretly stole $100,000. Later, that partner got drunk and foolishly revealed the truth. It was Aris's idea all along. Roz, upon hearing this, cut the man's tongue out in punishment. Seeing this, Aris collapses in fear, begging his boss for forgiveness. But a man like Roz would never let a traitor live. He pulls out a sharp dagger and stabs Aris repeatedly, not stopping until he collapses lifeless. Meanwhile, Anne and Harlan finally find shelter. Harlan is severely weakened. Without warmth, he may not survive until morning. So Anne reluctantly removes Harlan's wet clothes and uses her own coat to keep him warm. As they talk, they mention family. It turns out Harlan wasn't always alone. But after losing his wife and daughter, his life fell into darkness, and he lost all hope. After resting briefly, the two resume their journey. Along the way, Anne meets a few old friends who, after hearing the situation, agree to help fight back. Their team of 2 quickly grows to 6. As they pass another icy area, the elder Ozzy warns them. Beneath this frozen lake was once a forest, and the bubbles trapped under the ice are methane, extremely explosive. One wrong move could blow them sky high. When morning comes, the group reaches an ice village, Ozzy's home. It's remote and hard to find, perfect for hiding. Anne immediately contacts Chief Rollet. Soon, his patrol car arrives through the falling snow. Just as Anne is about to explain the situation, the chief blurts out. He wants to know where the crashed plane is. Anne freezes. How does he even know there is a plane? Realizing he slipped up, the chief tries to play it cool, claiming she mentioned it on the radio earlier. But Anne is absolutely certain she never said a word about any airplane. At that point, the truth becomes obvious. Chief Rollet has been bought by Roz from the very beginning. Seeing there's no point in hiding anymore, the chief switches tactics. He promises Anne half of the stolen fortune if she cooperates. But Anne doesn't even flinch. She threatens to report him to higher authorities, which would strip him of his badge instantly. Cornered, the chief drops his facade completely and pulls out his gun, aiming at both Anne and Harlan. With no other choice, the two are forced into the patrol car. Meanwhile, Drake and the others wait in town, expecting good news from the chief. But they never imagined that a few clever words from Harlan would tempt the chief into betraying them too. Harlan tells the chief that inside one of the backpacks is a GPS device that can locate the sunken airplane. The greedy chief, unable to resist, reaches into the bag, rummaging around for the device. But he has no idea the backpack contains a trap that Harlan set up earlier. The moment his hand triggers the mechanism, snap! It clamps shut, causing the patrol car to flip violently. From a distance, Roz watches the whole thing through his binoculars and immediately orders his men forward. Anne and Harlan crawl out through the shattered window, spotting the chief lying on the ground, barely breathing. Harlan moves to restrain him, but in that moment, the chief suddenly wakes and fires a shot directly at them as he aims right for Harlan's head. A bullet whistles in from afar, piercing the chief's forehead. Drake and Serena arrive just in time. They couldn't risk the chief killing Harlan, because without him, the money would be gone forever. To these people, money is everything. In other words, Harlan is their only valuable asset. Roz immediately signals Scarface to kill Anne first. But Scarface hesitates. Thinking of all the needless deaths, his conscience finally cracks. He tosses his gun at Roz and says, "If you want her dead, do it yourself." A man like Roz cannot tolerate betrayal, especially publicly. Furious, he raises his gun and shoots Scarface on the spot. Wounded and lying on the ice, Scarface pulls out a lighter and tosses it toward Roz's feet. Right beneath the ice lies a massive pocket of methane gas. The moment the flame touches it, boom! A violent explosion erupts. Roz stumbles helplessly as fire engulfs him, turning him into a human torch. Drake tries to rush in to help, but the flames shoot upward, blocking him completely. He can only watch as Roz is burned alive. In the chaos, Harlan drags Anne away towards shore, but before they can catch their breath, Anne suddenly disappears. A desperate cry for help echoes from a nearby storage shed. Harlan rushes inside and sees Drake holding Anne at gunpoint. Drake's demand is simple: "Take me to the plane." As the two men struggle, Anne suddenly lunges forward and slams into Drake's chest. Using that opening, Harlan jumps in, fighting Drake head-on. But Drake is stronger, and Harlan is thrown to the floor instantly. As Drake grows more ferocious, losing control, Anne seizes the chance and strikes him from behind, giving the two a brief moment to escape. But Drake isn't giving up that easily. He grabs his gun again and chases after them. Once more, he tackles Harlan to the ground. Anne reacts quickly, rushing in to help. Together, they finally overpower Drake completely. After recovering some strength, Harlan heads back to the frozen lake. He strips off his clothes and dives into the icy water, retrieving all the money from the crashed plane. But instead of keeping the fortune, he hands everything to Anne. The money is eventually donated to the village that helped them earlier. For Harlan, improving the villagers' lives means far more than personal luxury. And that is the end of the story. A film's value lies in its legacy, and a commentary's value lies in its insight. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. So, what did you think of this movie? Drop a comment down below and let me know.